What if Will Smith starred as Neo in The Matrix? Not only that, what if Val Kilmer was Morpheus? Believe it or not, this almost happened. Additionally, Switch was originally conceived as a trans character, to be portrayed as a woman inside the Matrix and a man outside of it. The agents also would have been cyber marines. There would have been no prophecy of the One, and Neo was originally envisioned as a high school kid. So let's dive in and find out why these changes happened, resulting in the movie we got, and also take a look at what could have been The Matrix. While working as comic book writers in the early 90s, the Wachowskis were co-writing Ecto Kid, a comic about a teenager who can see and travel between two dimensions, the real world and a hidden ghost-like plane called the Ectosphere. The idea of real worlds and worlds within worlds sparked an idea. What if our world was the virtual world? The Wachowskis were also growing increasingly bored with the formulaic blockbusters Hollywood was churning out and wanted to make something different, a film that fused all of the things they loved: the cyber-goth aesthetic of the Invisibles comics, the gravity-defying kung fu of Hong Kong cinema like Drunken Master 2, and the juxtaposition of time and space and action beats in animes like Akira and Ghost in the Shell. But more than that, they wanted to challenge audiences, to ask big questions about reality, control, and choice, while still delivering the thrills of an action movie. The result would be the idea for The Matrix, but it was their script for Assassins that led to their first Hollywood sale. Unfortunately, that experience quickly soured. Their original draft was filled with symbolism and layered context, exploring ideas like pocket moral universes, the notion that people live by their own internal code of ethics. But director Richard Donner wasn't interested in that kind of storytelling. He wanted a straightforward action thriller, so he brought in new writers for a page one rewrite, stripping away much of what made the script unique. The Wachowskis were so disappointed with the final film that they tried to have their names taken off of it, much to the shock of producer Joel Silver, who said, "This is your first movie, and you're trying to take your name off of it?" But they didn't care. The experience made one thing painfully clear: if they wanted their stories to stay true to their vision, with all the depth, symbolism, and complexity intact, they couldn't just write them. They had to direct them too, so they could finally have full creative control. As a result, they began working on Bound and The Matrix. However, no studio was going to let two first-time directors shoot a film as expensive and ambitious as The Matrix. Not only that, but earlier versions of the script confused Hollywood readers, leading every studio in town to pass. And while part of this is because the Wachowskis were largely unknowns, it's also due to several key differences in the earlier versions of the script. In the original version, Neo wasn't an adult computer hacker working a dead-end office job. He was a teenager still in high school. Instead of being arrested by agents at his job, he's pulled out of class by them. Additionally, in this version, there's no prophecy about a messianic figure destined to save humanity or talk of Neo being the One. He's just one of three potential recruits Morpheus' crew was tracking at the start of the film. And while Neo does manage to free Morpheus by the end of the film, Neo doesn't die, only to be revived by a kiss from Trinity. Instead, Trinity launches an EMP missile that destroys the Matrix, and Neo and Morpheus escape to the real world just in time, followed by a kiss from Trinity as Morpheus happily looks on. In this version, Neo isn't a symbol or a savior. He's just a brave kid who made the choice to wake up, choosing to question the world around him and take a stand when it counted. Eventually, Neo would evolve into a mid-30s corporate drone, who Morpheus believes is the One. However, unlike the final film where Neo displays godlike abilities, defeating Agent Smith with ease originally would have ended with a callback to Neo's first encounter with Smith where he gives him the finger. After Neo's shot, Trinity urges him to wake up and promises she won't let go, but she never confesses her love for him or reveals anything the Oracle might have told her, because in this version that subplot doesn't exist. After Neo stumbles back up to his feet, Agent Smith catches a glimpse of him just as the elevator doors close, as Neo flips him the finger before diving for the phone and escaping back to the real world. Once back on the Nebuchadnezzar, Neo kisses Trinity, even though she hasn't told him she loves him. Just moments after, Morpheus disables the Sentinels with an EMP. The only indication in this version that Neo is the One, besides coming back to life, is when he flies off at the end of the film. In this version, while Neo becomes the One, his journey is far from over. He hasn't been shown to be invincible in combat, and the agents still pose a real threat. Agent Smith's survival leaves their conflict unresolved, and positions him as the clear main villain in the sequel, unlike the final film, where Smith is seemingly destroyed, only to be brought back in the sequel through some plot gymnastics. Had this version been made, the sequels likely would have continued to show Neo growing into his role, rather than turning into an unstoppable force. The opening was originally different too. Instead of opening with Trinity's conversation with Cypher, it began with a young man and recent addition to Morpheus' crew named Eddie, as he calls his girlfriend. As we hear their conversation, Eddie excitedly tells her about everything he's learned and makes plans to meet her to tell her about it. Unbeknownst to him, the agents are listening and have traced the call. Moments later, a SWAT team descends on his location, breaks down his door, and attempts to take him out. Like Trinity in the final film, Eddie demonstrates enhanced abilities as he takes out several attackers and escapes across rooftops, desperately trying to reach a payphone. But unlike Trinity, he doesn't make it. The agents catch up to him and inject him with the truth serum, extracting 3 names, including Neo's. Agent Smith then uses the same payphone to taunt Morpheus, foreshadowing the conflict to come. In a brutal twist, Eddie dies, not from the agents, but because Morpheus unplugs him from the real world to prevent him from giving up any more information. Eddie's fatal flaw was love. His attachment to his girlfriend tied him to the Matrix, and ultimately cost him his life. Later in the film, Morpheus warns Neo that personal attachments are a weakness, something that got Eddie killed. As an opening, Eddie's story would have explored the emotional toll of waking up from the Matrix, the pain of leaving loved ones behind, the temptation to reconnect, and how those ties could be used against you. It also would have introduced the truth serum early, setting up a narrative parallel with Morpheus' own capture later in the film, showing how he ends up in the very same position he once had to end Eddie's life to avoid. It's a tragic, thoughtful opening that raised big emotional questions the final film only had time to hint at. Another major difference lies in the nature of the Matrix itself and its backstory. Instead of sentient machines, the original antagonists were cyber marines, RoboCop-like soldiers created by humans and deployed globally, only to turn against their creators and take control of the world. Eventually, the cyber marines ran out of energy and began breeding humans on vast farms, using their bodies as power sources. This directly contradicts the popular myth that the Wachowskis originally wanted human brains to be used as computer processors, and were forced to change it to the battery concept by the studio. The Matrix itself, in this version, may not have been a fully separate virtual world accessed through phone lines, but rather a kind of illusory projection layered over reality, with Morpheus' crew traveling in and out of it through portals. The agents too were conceptualized differently. Rather than being sentient programs inside a digital construct, they were cyber marines in human disguise. This aligns with numerous behind-the-scenes accounts over the years revealing that studio executives struggled to wrap their heads around the plot during the film's early development. The film also originally ended with Neo arriving in Zion, the last remaining human city, which is only mentioned in dialogue throughout the final film. Ultimately, the Wachowskis felt they had too much story to cram it into the film, nor did they have the budget to bring it to life and do it justice, so they left it for the sequel. In later years, the Wachowskis revealed that The Matrix was conceived in part as a trans allegory, something that resonates even more deeply given both filmmakers are trans women themselves. One cut element from the original film would have made that subtext even clearer. The character of Switch, a member of the Nebuchadnezzar's crew, was originally written to be portrayed by a woman inside the Matrix and a man outside of it. The implication was that Switch's digital form reflected their true self-image, basically how they saw themselves, rather than how the world saw them. While that concept was ultimately dropped, the final version of Switch was still designed with an androgynous appearance, preserving a visual nod to the character's fluid identity. A subplot deleted from the final film involves Cypher revealing to Neo during their late-night chat that there were 5 ones before him, who all died at the hands of agents under the mistaken belief that they were the one. When Neo confronts Morpheus about it on their way to see the Oracle, Morpheus admits that he lost his faith after the 5th one died, giving viewers a reason to doubt that Morpheus is right about Neo. Additionally, it would have added more motivation to Cypher's betrayal, as he would have lost faith in Morpheus constantly anointing people as the one, only to watch them die, chasing a prophecy that may never have been real. This subplot was cut when the studio asked the editors to trim 5 minutes out of the film to improve pacing. The role of Neo went through a long and winding casting process before landing with Keanu Reeves, and he wasn't the Wachowskis' first choice. Their top pick was Johnny Depp, but Warner Brothers wanted a movie star, pushing for big names like Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio. Pitt was the first to say yes, but after wrapping 7 years into bed, he backed out, saying he was too exhausted to take on such an ambitious project. DiCaprio followed, initially signing on but ultimately stepping away, not wanting to dive into another effects-heavy film so soon after finishing Titanic. The Wachowskis then approached Will Smith, who passed on the role out of skepticism over the film's ambitious visual style. As Smith later admitted, he didn't think the bullet time effect would work and felt he wasn't mature enough as an actor at the time to fully trust the director's vision, and he would have tried to make them put more jokes into the movie. Ultimately, he passed on the film in favor of Wild Wild West, later saying he regretted turning it down. Had Smith been cast, though, Morpheus would have been played by Val Kilmer. Ultimately, the role would go to Lawrence Fishburne and become the breakout part that had evaded him for years, after his agents had previously advised him to turn down Pulp Fiction, a role that went to Samuel L. Jackson instead. Jackson's performance in Pulp impressed the producers of Die Hard with a Vengeance so much that they offered him the role of Zeus, a part originally intended for Fishburne. Even Sandra Bullock, who producer Joel Silver worked with on Demolition Man, was offered the role of Neo, and told they'd rewrite the character into a woman if she wanted to do it. Ultimately, after striking out with all of these actors, Warner Brothers was finally open to revisiting Johnny Depp, but by then they were pushing for Keanu Reeves, who had deeply connected with the material from the start. For the Wachowskis, Keanu's understanding of the film's themes and his total commitment to their vision made all the difference, leading to them casting him over their original first choice, Johnny Depp. In the end, The Matrix became a landmark film that redefined action, sci-fi, and visual effects. But it's fascinating to imagine the version that almost was. With a very different script and Will Smith in the lead, it could have been a radically different movie. And yet, despite all the changes, the final film still arrived like a lightning bolt, similar to when the original Star Wars came out. The irony is that The Matrix premiered the same year as The Phantom Menace, which would be poorly received, while The Matrix became the real revolution, pushing visual effects forward in the way the original Star Wars once had, and telling its own story of a prophesized chosen one with far more style, substance, and cultural impact. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Bullets and Blockbusters for more great content.